What's happening, sweet angels? Jazz trumpeter and composer Bobby Spellman here, welcoming you back to our series on how to read chord symbol notation. In our last episode, we covered triads, including major and minor chords, as well as sixth chords and seventh chords of various kinds. Today, we're going to dive a little deeper and get into extensions, including 9's, 11's, and 13's on this episode of Theory with Bob. All right, say you're perusing a lead sheet or a piece of sheet music of any kind and you run across a C9 chord. Now, what could this possibly mean? Well, if you remember from last episode, a C7 chord would indicate a C major triad with a minor seventh on top. Now, if the seventh is up here, if we follow the scale up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the eighth gives us the octave, so the ninth will give us the second degree of the scale up an octave. So in this case, in C major, the ninth is going to be D, but we call it the ninth because it exists above the seventh degree of the scale. Now these notes, the 9, 11, and 13, are called extensions. And for whatever reason in jazz music, we love to shorten things, so often these are called tensions. That's also an appropriate name because oftentimes these 9's, 11's, and 13's add a certain degree of extra tension to the chord. But this is really a shortening of the name extensions. So extensions include 9's, 11's, and 13's. Now, as a quick, brief overview of this, a 9 is the same thing as the second of the scale up the octave. An 11 is the equivalent of the fourth up the scale up an octave. And the 13th is the equivalent of the sixth of the scale up the octave. Now you can voice these, once again, in any way that you would like. So the chord symbol notation does not indicate the way that the chords are voiced, but rather just the root note of the chord and the chord quality. However, they're indicated as 9's, 11's, and 13's because by specifying them as such, you are indicating that there is also a seventh of the chord. We'll talk a little bit about more how to add various extensions to just triads, but for now, the most common thing that you will see is the 7 chord with a 9, 11, or 13 on top. So, going back to the C9 chord, just as a C7 indicates a C major triad with a minor seventh, a C9 will be a C7 chord, C dominant seventh, with the 9 on top. And that gives us a C9 sound. Now, what if you wanted to have a C major 7 with the ninth on top? Well, that is indicated as C major 9. So I'm going to make a quick distinction between these two chords. C major 9 is a C major 7 chord, that is a major triad with a major seventh on top, with the 9 on top of that. It's a beautiful, there it is, it's a beautiful sound right there, C major 9. Now that's as opposed to C major 9 would be notated like this. C9 indicates a flat seventh, so it'd be the same as a C dominant seventh with a 9 on top. So if you see C9, that's C dominant seventh with the 9 on top. If you see C major ninth, that's a C major 7 with the 9 on top. Anytime you see a 9, you can assume that the 7th will be included. You will not necessarily need to see C major 7 parentheses 9. Sometimes you will see that. Sometimes you'll see C major 7, 9, 13, or just 13, something of that nature in parentheses, but more often than not, it's simply notated as a C major 9 or as a C9 chord. All right, now, say we wanted to do a C minor 7th with a 9 on top. Listen to what a delightful chord this is. Ooh, very nice. That will be indicated as a C minor 9. So if you see C min 9, that's going to indicate that you've got a C minor triad with the minor 7th with the natural 9 on top. All right, there's your C minor 9 chord. Now, as we discussed last week, you could also have a C minor triad with a major 7th on it, giving you the C minor major 7 chord. If you wanted to indicate a C minor major 7 with a 9 on top, that's going to be a C minor major 9. All right, so no funny business here. All you're doing is adding the 9 to the top of the chord, the 7th chord, but once again, as long as there is a 9 involved, you can assume that there's also a 7th in the chord. Now, returning to our C dominant 7th, or just C7, one common chord that serves as the 5 chord in a minor key is the C7 flat 9. So we're just taking our 9 and moving it down a half step to create the flat 9 sound. One of my favorite chords. There's a lot that lovely things that can be done with this chord in various different contexts, but that's what we have here is a C7 flat 9, and that will typically be indicated as C7 and then in parentheses flat 9. Sometimes you'll just see it as flat 9 without the parentheses. Nonetheless, that gives us a flat 9 chord. You can also have a sharp 9 chord. This is common in Jimi Hendrix's music and in a lot of funk music. You have a C7 sharp 9. It gives us, the sharp 9 sort of is its own thing, but it's also equivalent to the flat 3. So you get kind of a bluesy sound out of it. It sounds like this. Woo! And that's a nice sound. Now that can go either as sort of a blues sound or that can indicate more of an altered sound, but getting into the depths of how to analyze what chords, scales to use rather on each chord is a concept for a totally different episode. So we're going to talk about that later, but nonetheless, you can see if you wanted to notate a sharp 9, it would be C7 sharp 9. All right, so we got C7 with a 9, C7 flat 9, C7 sharp 9. That's just altering that 9th, which is the equivalent of the 2nd of the scale, up an octave. Now, let's go to our C major 7 chord. It's very common to have a C major 9 chord, but it's very rare, in fact, I don't know that I've ever seen it, to have a C major 7 flat 9. Could you do it? Sure, you can do whatever you want, but almost never will you see it. More commonly, you might see a C major 7 with a sharp 9 on it. That's a chord that I've seen frequently in the music of Gil Evans, especially his arrangements for the Miles Davis nonet on Birth of the Cool. You can, from time to time, run into a C major 7 with a sharp 9, but it's fairly uncommon. It's an odd chord. You won't see those very often. Usually, if you have a major 7, you're just going to have your regular old 9 on top. Now, similarly, if you have a C minor 9, there'd be no purpose in having a sharp 9 because that would just double the minor third. The minor third and the sharp 9 would be the same note, so that would be pretty unhelpful, so I've never seen that chord. And similarly, it's very rare to see a C minor 7 with a flat 9 on top. I can't say that I've ever seen that chord. Again, conceivably possible, but I think it really changes the character of the chord to be something different than what you're hearing. So anyway, conversation for another time. Don't worry about it. Very typically, you're going to see a C minor 9 chord, but we've already covered that. Now, C minor major, once again, you wouldn't have a sharp 9, and you'd rarely have a flat 9. Typically, sharp 9s and flat 9s are paired with a dominant 7th chord. You don't really see them very often on major 7 or minor 7 chords. But hey, we're covering whatever we can just so you can understand what you're looking at when you see it in case you run into something crazy. All right, gang. Well, congratulations on making it through the first part of this video. By this time, you have enough information to understand that the 9 is the 2, the 11 is the 4, the 13 is the 6, and you can apply various alterations to those extensions in order to create different colors. That gives you enough knowledge to be able to figure out how to interpret these chord symbols on a piece of music so that you can read them. For the next 10 or so minutes of this video, I'm going to go through and explain many different combinations of these chords and just geek out about different chords that I like. You might have a lot of fun with that, and if you will, then stick around. If you think that's going to be dull and boring and you think you got enough out of this video, I'm giving you the out now, so you can abandon ship and take this information and try to understand some chord changes on your own. But if you'd like to get into some wild different chord combinations with me and really get deep into the possibilities with these various extensions, stick around and we're going to have some fun. And if you just like to skip right to minor 7 flat 5 chords, you can go to about 20 minutes and 15-ish seconds, maybe 20 minutes and 30 seconds into the video, and I'll explain minor 7 flat 5s. That might be helpful for you. All right, gang? So, if you're sticking around, we're diving in. Here we go! All right, let's move along. So, going back to our major, now let's do a dominant 7th chord. All right, so major triad with a flat 7th on it. That's our C7 chord. You may see from time to time a C11 chord. Now, that just includes the 11th on top. Now, it's fairly rare to see a an 11 on top of a major chord. Oftentimes people find it a little abrasive to have the third of the major triad clashing with the 4 up an octave, so it's a little less common to see that, but you will sometimes see a C11 chord. Now that could, again, as described before, I'm using C as an example because it's easy to see this stuff, but that may be, D flat 11, D11, etc. It doesn't matter what the root note is. All right, so we're moving along here. More commonly, you will see a sharp 11. Now, a dominant 7th, C7 sharp 11, that gives you a Lydian dominant sound, and this is a little bit more common to see. You might see this often in Thelonious Monk's music or any kind of modern jazz of any kind. This is a very common sound. Now, that C7 sharp 11, sharp 11 can also be included very delightfully on a C major 7 chord. So that gives us kind of a Lydian sound. This is often the chord that will end a piece of music. You'll hear this very frequently in a major key. People will end on a major 7 sharp 11 chord. It's one of my favorite chords. It's a delightful sound. And that may also be paired with the 9. So you may have a C9 sharp 11 chord, and that's getting pretty lush. We're getting some beautiful sounds out of this now. Ooh, C9 sharp 11. All right, you won't ever see a flat 11, because a flat 11 is the same as the major third. I've never seen that before. It's conceivable that you would see it in a minor chord, but it wouldn't make any sense. That wouldn't be how we would notate that, so don't worry about it. Once again, I'm just covering the bases here, but again, you won't ever see, I've never in my life seen a flat 11 chord. I don't think there's any such thing. Anyway, but it's very, very rare to see a major 7 chord with an 11. A major 7, 11, no alteration, is extremely rare because, once again, that gives us kind of an inverted F Lydian sound more than anything, and people find it a little abrasive to have the 11 clash with the 3. You can hear that the sound of that minor 9th is a little abrasive, so generally speaking, people do not write major 7, 11 chords. However, once again, major 7 sharp 11, beautiful sound, very common. You run into that all the time. Just a delight. Let's just wade through that chord for a minute here. Delightful. All right, that brings us to the third chord in what we would call our upper structure triads. We call it that because if you take the three notes that can be an extension on the chord, play them together, that gives us it's our own little triad that can float above the chord. Anyway, that third chord now is going to be the 13. Now, once again, returning to our dominant 7th, our C7 chord, a C7 13, or just a regular old C13 will indicate the same thing, which is a C major triad with a minor 7th with the 13 on top. Once again, the 13 is going to be the equivalent of the 6th of the scale up an octave. So in C, that gives us an A on top. Now the 13 is very commonly paired with the 9, and it would be common if something is written as C13 for a harmonic instrumentalist to play it as a C9 13. So that gives us both the D and the A on a C7 chord. That would be a C13, C7 with a 9 and a 13. It could be notated either as C13 or as a C7 with a 13 in parentheses. Either one means the same thing. You could do the same thing with a major 7 chord. So now we have a C major triad with a major 7th on top and the 13 on top. That's going to be indicated as a C major 13 chord. Once again, if you have the 13, it implies the addition of the 7th of the scale. So now we have C major 13. It would be very common to see C major 9 13 in parentheses. Sometimes when chords get complicated, we're going to add the parentheses so that we understand that you've got a major 7 on the bottom and then these various extensions on top. Another very common chord that you will see based on the C major 7 chord is a C major 7, 9 sharp 11 13. And that gives you all 7 notes in the Lydian scale stacked in thirds on one another. And that sounds absolutely delightful, and it goes like this. Ooh, there it is. C major 7, 9 sharp 11 13. Now, returning to our minor 7 chord, minor 9 we have. You can have a minor 11. That's a very common chord as compared with the major 7, 11. You'd never see that, but you will see a minor 7 with an 11 on top. That's a delightful sound, and that comes up frequently in music. You will also frequently see a C minor 13 chord, and that includes that minor 7th and the natural 13, which is the 6th up an octave. That's a very common chord, and frequently we'll have a C minor 7 with a 9 and a 13. Much less frequently you will sometimes see, very rarely, but we'll add it in because we're having fun, a C minor 7 with a sharp 11. That's a particular kind of sound that you might regard as coming from the harmonic minor modes, but more on that later. That's certainly a possibility. Either way, we're just dealing with these various combinations of minor 7s, major 7s, and the extensions or tensions that you'll see on the top of the chord. So once again, the most common situation that you'll find will be a C minor 11 or C minor 9, certainly, C minor 9, 11, C minor 9, 11, 13, C minor 9, 13, any number of these combinations. All you're dealing with is the 9, 11, and 13, which is the equivalent, once again, of the 2, the 4, and the 6 of the scale up the octave. Of course, you could voice these any way that you want, as long as the bass player is playing the root note in the root. You know, let's say a major 9, 11, 13 chord, you can play them all just right next to each other. You still get the same effect, you know what I'm saying? So it doesn't really matter whether these extensions are played above the 7, but the fact that you have a 9, 11, and 13 implies that you have a 7, all right? So that's how you're reading that. Now there's a couple other funny chords that we can talk about based on altering these 9s, 11s, and 13s. And most of them occur on dominant 7th chords. These are very common as 5 chords resolving to a 1, and we can use these various extensions to add tension to the chord to make it feel like it wants to resolve to a 1 chord. Now, there are various different ways that you can combine the 9, 11, and 13 on a dominant chord. So, one of my favorite chords of all time is the dominant 13 flat 9 chord. So in this case, you see a C7, a C13 flat 9 is typically how this would be written, but you could also see a C7 with, in parentheses, a flat 9 and 13 in there. So that gives you this sound. It's a beautiful sound, it's a beautiful chord. You'll hear that from time to time. More commonly, to get either an altered sound or a Phrygian dominant kind of sound, you will see a flat 9 with a flat 13. So that's usually indicated as C7, flat 9, flat 13 in parentheses. So anytime you see the parentheses, that's just giving you what the extensions are. However, if you were to just see a C13, flat 9, that would also indicate that you have a flat 7 in that chord. All right, so that's a common one. We get flat 9, flat 13. You could get flat 13, sharp 9. You could have a sharp 9, sharp 11, flat 13. You could have a flat 9, sharp 11, flat 13. That's a very common one. That very much indicates an altered sound. A C altered scale would sound delightful in this particular context. And then at times you'll also see a flat 13 written as a sharp 5. Now flat 13 in this case is an A flat. A flat, or a sharp 5 would be a G sharp, and we know that A flat and G sharp are enharmonic. Therefore, a sharp 5 will also indicate an altered sound, but same kind of note. So you might see a C7, flat 9, sharp 5, sharp 11 would be possible. At this point, we're just putting together different combinations of these extensions, whether they be 9s, flat 9s, 11s, sharp 11s, 13s, flat 13s, any number of combinations will give you different colors on these various different chords. Now, not all of them are common, not all of them work. Some of them create much more dissonance than others, but really coming to understand what the different colors of these chords are and what are common chords to run into will require you to play through some tunes and get adjusted to the sort of standard chord vocabulary that you'll run into in various lead sheets and jazz tunes and compositions of various kinds. But that gives you all you will need to know given the minor 7, major 7, dominant 7, minor, major 7 chords plus the extensions. Now once again, you can just extrapolate all of this to apply to your minor, major 7. So you got minor, major 7 chord, you got minor, major 9, minor, major, 13, minor, major, 9, 11, 13. I guess you could do a minor, major, 9, sharp, 11, 13 if you want, although that sort of becomes a different, that works too. It's up to you to try to find different ways of experimenting with these extensions and upper structure triads to add them to our various seventh chords to make some delightful, beautiful sounds that you can use in your own compositions or that you can interpret in the compositions of other people that you are learning to play. And I almost forgot, there's one more chord that I think it deserves mentioning in this particular episode, and that is the minor 7 flat 5 chord. Minor 7 flat 5 is a delightful sound. It typically serves as the 2 in a minor 2 5 1. The only difference between a minor 7 and a minor 7 flat 5 is, of course, that minor 7 has a perfect fifth, and a minor 7 flat 5, we now have a diminished fifth. So what we've got here is a diminished triad with a minor 7th on top. Now that's to be distinguished from a diminished 7th, which is going to be a diminished triad with a diminished 7th on top. So anytime we see a diminished chord, typically speaking, a diminished chord will be indicated by a circle that looks like this. And a diminished 7th will be a circle with a 7, diminished 7th, or sometimes it's written as DIM 7. Either one is acceptable. However, a minor 7 flat 5 is going to be a minor 7th chord with a flat 5 on it. It's a little bit different because you don't have a diminished 7th, you've got a minor 7th. Now, just as a minor 7 chord can include a 9, 11, or 13, you can also have a minor 7 flat 5 with a 9. That gives you a minor 9 flat 5, or sometimes it will be indicated as minor 7 flat 5 with a 9 in parentheses. You could also have a 11 on top of your minor 7 flat 5, or conceivably, you could have a 13 on top of your minor 7 flat 5, although that's very rare. I don't know that I've ever seen that, although it is kind of a delightful sound, so we'll work on that later. But anyway, that's your minor 7 flat 5 chord. That just indicates that you got a minor 7th, but it's a flat 5 instead of a perfect 5th. And once again, you can add all of these various extensions on top of that, and it provides a nice sound as the 2 in a minor 2 5 1. All right, gang, well, I hope that helps in your quest for musical excellence. If you like this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more theory videos and conversations on improvisation and musicality of various kinds. All right, gang, have a wonderful time working on this stuff and practicing this music, and I will catch you on the next one. See ya! Theory with Bob. All right, friends, thanks so much for checking out this video. I hope it helped in your understanding of the musical world and in your pursuit of the majesty of musical self-expression. If you like this video, you can let us know by giving it a like, and be sure to subscribe to the channel for more musical education videos going forward. You can also follow me on Instagram @BobSpellman for some more musical fun. The Ridgewood School of Music is now accepting new students online as well as in person in the Brooklyn, Queens, and greater New York City area. You can find us on our website at www.ridgewoodschoolofmusic.com, or you can send us an email at ridgewoodschoolofmusic@gmail.com, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can, try to set you up with a great teacher for the kinds of music that you're looking to study. All right, gang, well, thanks again, and until next time, happy practicing.